Hi everybody, my name is Kolja Reis. I'm the co-CEO of a company called Democo. It's an Austrian-based mobile payment solutions provider. We work really closely with the carriers. We have working relationships with currently about 104 carriers in Europe. And I joined the company as co-CEO about 9 months ago to bring their business to the US. I originally came to the US in 2005 in order to start my US career as a project manager in New York, and had my feet down in Los Angeles for a couple of years, and then I finally found my way to Palo Alto. And I'm probably never going to leave, because as a techie I love it here, obviously. Before I joined Democo, I was managing director for MoPay, one of the largest mobile payments providers in the world. They also started in 2000, and they were originally a Deutsche Telekom subsidiary. So why wearable devices? That's a question that I want to answer really quickly. So the mission of the company that I currently work for is that we are making payments more convenient and take the friction out of the payment process, take some of the pain away, and we work with whatever devices are available out there. So we're trying to not focus on mobile necessarily or PCs necessarily. We're just trying to use whatever there is currently and add an application to it to make payments more convenient. So my mission is not to make the world a better place. I always find that a little ridiculous, even though that's Silicon Valley speech. But my mission is to make payments more convenient. And as such, I hopefully can add a little bit to where wearable devices are today, and particularly the application layer is for that. If there's any use to that yet, or if that's just all future still.
Right, thank you. I'm Florian Brody. I came the first time to the US in '88 and then stayed in '89 to build the first electronic books in Santa Monica. We had a company that was on the beach. We had boogie boards for lunch break and sunset calls to watch the green flash over the intercom. And we built electronic books, and at the time it was the leading multimedia company. And I worked with them to raise money in Germany, and then went back to Europe, worked in Vienna, built the first multimedia consulting firm there, came back here to teach, and been teaching at university since '88. And then in '97 we decided to relocate here to build a startup that would integrate content and mobile commerce. It was way too early. But nevertheless, that's one of the fascinating things of Silicon Valley. I mean, I come from Vienna, and my business partner came from Germany. And a year later, we had raised $2.5 million. Completely impossible in Europe. Another year later, we ran against a brick wall in April 2000. Since then, I've been working with a wide range of companies, mostly early stage companies, providing marketing service. Today, I'm a principal at an agency called Halo. We provide an outsourced marketing department for companies who are in the bind of either hiring a senior marketing executive, who the first thing he or she wants is 3 people to work for them, or a junior person who comes every 20 minutes, what should I do next? So we provide a complete department, maybe only 2 days a week, but it's a complete marketing department. But I continue to work with international startups, and I'm very interested in how computers develop. I mean, I've continued to work with electronic publishing, digital media, content, and so the topic, back in '96, I said to my partner, computers will go away. I have to admit, I have an early life as a software engineer, but when these small computers came, you know, the size, I said, that's only for people with soldering irons. Real people program the big ones. And now I believe computers will completely disappear. Come on, what do you mean disappear? But then when you think about it, if you are in the lucky situation to buy a new S-Class Mercedes, you don't say your partner, I'm getting a data center. And this thing has 20 computers built in. So that is where I would like to take the discussion today. Bob, who unfortunately is not yet here or can't make it, we don't know, was on a call with us, and he said, hey, this is a little bit like a TED Talk, and that's my idea. So I really encourage your participation, be it with questions, be it with statements, to really have a very interactive evening. And the other person who couldn't make it is Danny Cindy, who runs R&D acquisition for Honda, and he had to go to Europe on business. So yeah, welcome. Do you want to start with the statement? Do you want to start? Yeah, correct.
Okay. Well, the topic is wearable technology, and as you mentioned, computers are disappearing. Obviously, they're disappearing not because they're going away; they're just getting smaller and smaller and becoming almost imperceptible. So one of the most fascinating products I saw recently announced was the Google contact lens, which is essentially sorry. That computer is a wearable device. So that's an insulin meter. It's not just a research project. This is a real product that they've announced, and that will be available to buy. It's a insulin meter embedded in a contact lens. So they have a sensor in your contact lens that can take insulin measurements from the tear fluid in your eyes. It's got two sort of metal rings in it. One's an antenna that essentially just serves the function of picking up electromagnetic power fields from the ambient electromagnetic signal around, and that's what powers the chip. So you don't actually have to take the contact lens out and put it in a charger. It charges itself. And then it's got a second antenna, also a ring around the lens that does a low energy Bluetooth communication and sends your insulin levels back to your iPhone. Okay, so that is true wearable technology, and it's possible because it's now possible to make chips that are that small and that powerful and that low energy consumption. So I think that's just one example of how the continued miniaturization of semiconductor technology is driving what you call the disappearance of computer, but it's really sort of the proliferation of intelligent devices everywhere.
So computers disappear because they become so small that you can't see them anymore. But they also disappear because you wouldn't call this a computer. It's a contact lens.
Well, it's got
computer power.
It's got the ability to do an insulin measurement and then communicate via low energy Bluetooth protocol. So 20 years earlier, that the computing power required to do that, just even to manage the communication protocol, would have you would have had to have a PC and a sort of a plug-in card this size to handle that sort of processing power, right? And now it's in a chip that is small enough to basically be embedded in a contact lens that you can't even see it. It's invisible to the wearer.
And it's not something the beauty of these developments is it's not something where you update your operating system. I mean, you have it, that's the way it is. They may do a new one next year, but it's not something where you're constantly busy backing up the data.
Yeah, you hope it doesn't get updated, or you catch a computer virus in your contact lens, and your eyes start to tear.
Well, one of the things you're seeing is that, in the pharmaceutical business, it's getting away from RX to DX, so diagnostics. And with these wearable devices, they're getting insane amounts of information they never had before. And so as insulin as an example here, they try to go in here and thought that well controlling the insulin, like really managing it well, was going to make you healthier. That's not really necessarily the case. It's supposed to fluctuate. It's a natural thing that we have. And so some of these companies are realizing that what they thought they knew isn't what they know, and it's because of big data. It's because of these personalized things that they're getting all this information and aggregating it. So DX is changing how RX is done in the pharmaceutical industry.
Right, but then you also open up a whole other ballgame on privacy, who owns the
Oh,
data, right? I don't know if this
absolutely.
is the forum for this, I'm curious about it,
Yeah.
on who owns the data and or, you know, the data that you generate out of your pacemaker. Who owns the data?
I mean, in general, we're bound by HIPAA, but that's loose. I
It's
mean,
very loose,
Yeah.
and you know, I think there was just also to the sequencing. I mean, we saw what happened with 21andMe.
Yep.
FDA has shut them down. There's still, or we saw what happened with the Google glasses, where an individual the glasses were yanked off her face and they were stomped because people's privacy was invaded. So I think we're going into uncharted territory, and I think the more discussions we have about it, on how people feel about it, I think the better it is, and this is a good start.
I could say a million things about data in the sequencing space and the FDA and 23andMe, but I think that's probably a different forum.
It is, but it's close to, if you have a lens in your eye,
Yep.
where does the data go?
Yep.
And does the patient who is wearing the lens, who bought the lens, where does the data, who owns the data? And who will benefit from the data, right?
At the end of the day, it should be the patient's data, but that's very. The FDA, for example, doesn't want you to own your data. They're basically, when they shut down 23andMe, they said, you're the patient are too dumb to actually interpret your data or have it interpreted. We have to prove that for you, which I think is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. And all that's going to happen is that the data that's collected through these devices is going to move offshore into less regulated entities. And if you can't operate 23andMe in the U.S., then you're going to have a sequencing company in the U.S. that reads the data, and then an interpretation company in Gibraltar or Chile that interprets it for you, and the FDA will be completely powerless. That's the beauty of the internet, that you can basically sidestep regulation and avoid all these things.
So why did the FDA usurp?
It's a power game.
It was a power game.
Yeah, the FDA is about safety, but the real safety is the safety of the jobs of the people that work there. So that's what they try to maximize. So that's why drugs will not get approved if there's a minimal risk factor, because if somebody dies of an FDA-approved drug or device, then it's back on the person who approved it. If 1,000 people die because a drug or a device wasn't approved, then those are nameless deaths, right? So if they ever did a safety and efficacy study of the FDA itself, it probably wouldn't get approved by its own standards.
Thank God that's a lot of it, right?
But aren't those appointees, the FDA are appointees by the people we elect?
But there's only a
So-
handful.
No.
I think we've
99% of them are-
hijacked this.
Yeah.
No, it's great.
Sorry.
You know,
But where would you see it going now? Do you see that we will have more discussion? Because this panel was about where do we see the future of wearables and where
yeah,
it's going. So
we're gonna have more discussion, but I don't know when we're gonna go into the FDA. Yeah, it's but generally the question who owns the data once it's generated. Because even something very banal, how far do you walk per day? Any of those Fitbits or other devices. At the moment, it's kind of cool. You can control your weight there. You can connect your bathroom scales to the thing, and you know exactly, so you know exactly what you do, how much you eat. You take pictures of your food. It's yeah. I'm not into that, but it sounds kind of cool. But imagine that you try to get a job, and they say we only hire people who do this for 3 months. Because we don't want to take a risk that you don't walk enough and then you get sick. So suddenly you have to do this, or you only can get into that school if you have a coefficient of less than 27 between the steps you take and the food you eat or whatever, come up with something. Yeah? Then it gets, so it's the data generation is a challenge.
Florian, they have so many rules and regulations with regard now to understanding who you are, what you are. I don't believe that would be a contributor, right? Just think how vanilla the interviewing questions can be, and that they transcend the slightest of lines. There's legal repercussions to the company. So I don't think it would manifest itself in hiring.
I mean, in terms of who owns the data, there's market developed models for that. Take Gmail. You have the free Gmail. Okay, so you get a service for free, and Google uses it to target ads to you. They read your email and they present ads. Okay. And if you want a free service, well then, who are you to complain? Okay. And if you don't want that, you pay for it, and then it's your data. You own it, and they're the custodian of your data. You basically tell them how long you want it stored. You can delete it. It's your data. So I think that's the way it's going to work in any of these scenarios. If you don't want to pay for it, then you make it available, and you get some service in return for it. And if you're really concerned about it, then you basically pay someone to host it, and they're essentially a custodian, just like your bank is a custodian of your money or your stocks.
But the other side is what sort of data do you generate? And while we're on this tangent, I recall a radio conversation about the impact of food on body development, lots of medical research done in the 19th century. And they were always wondering, it was kind of weird and twisted, and then a research project found out why all the data seemed to be kind of off. So how much weight you gain on certain foods and all these things. And then they found out the reason was that at that time, 18th, 19th century, the pathologists only had access to bodies of homeless and poor people because they couldn't get anybody else. So it's just the bodies they had to analyze were not representative of the general population because it was illegal, or you had to give your body and say, okay, if you're homeless, you don't know you, then we just take your body. So the data you generate changes the perception. Please.
Yeah, are there lobbyists that we should know about who have positions that they are talking to members of Congress about in terms of where the data how the data should be handled? Is there a lobbying group?
Maybe, no idea.
Depends on what data you're
Electronic
talking about.
Frontier
If it's
Foundation,
patient data, there's.
Yeah, I'm sure there are, EFF for instance, but I mean,
I mean, the lobbying group.
let's not hope that the politicians
Yeah,
are
no,
fix anything.
the lobbying group might have a different perspective about the data. In other words, the data can be used in a way that you might not, as a citizen, you might not like. But the lobbyist would allow the data, would push for the data to be used in another way.
I just want to make a general comment here before I kick this off. I think we have an incredibly advanced audience here. I typically speak about mobile payments and that are I'm circling back. Stay with me. I typically speak about mobile payments or attend conferences about mobile payments and technology like that. And so typically like about 30-35 minutes into any discussion, we end up asking the question, who owns the data? This audience needed 3 minutes. And we weren't even talking about payments, which makes me feel really good. It gives me that fuzzy feeling that others suffer from the same thing. So I don't think that we will solve the mystery of who owns the data, regardless of what topic we touch. We know that with wearable devices, and I'm trying to wrap this up and circle back to the actual topic here again. With wearable devices, the one thing that we will all have is there will be new legal issues. And there will be a lot of discussion around the big data that is generated there and who's using it in what way. So there's no doubt about it. And be it a payments application or be it a health application, that doesn't even matter. There is so much question around it. But today, we aren't even at that point yet, I think. At least in many industries where we are at the point where we can really seriously discuss that question.
There is precedence for data ownership. Just think everyone in the room, you have your American Express cards. How long have we been members? It's on our card. It's a very sophisticated company, extremely sophisticated. So how long have they been using our data and what have they been doing with it? Right, American Express, one of the most progressive companies with regard to marketing. So there is precedence, but they have been so stealthful, so beautifully adroit in their marketing that they bury this ownership. Who knows, in fact, how they've used it? Who knows, in fact, if they're the template or if they're the Satan of data proliferation or transactions.
And if I can maybe add to that.
Yeah, please.
Not only wearables, but they're also building in technology that you and I don't even see when we call in the call center.
Yes.
Where they will have voice analysis.
That's right.
That will depict what your mood is. In
Perfect.
order to know how to engage
Exactly.
with you. So that, I mean, you're asking, I mean, the panel description, I looked at it again because I'm really careful not to hijack any of your.
No,
your
that's
topic.
okay.
But
It's
it's
our
going
event.
into, to Koso's point, it's going into uncharted territory in all of these developments. And I think what we're seeing with the Google Glasses is the typical human response. To something new, you reject it, you fight it, then you adapt to it. I mean, I don't know what the
Yeah.
cycles are.
But I think
so-
you have to go back in here. I mean, we're here in the United States, and here in California, Northern California, we believe technology is going to save the world. We really, truly believe that. It's a religion. And we believe that the next technology is going to insert whatever. And that's not really true. I mean, it will
I'm with
help,
you on
and it will
that.
do certain things, but it's
Right.
not a panacea. With all of these things, there's ups and there's downs. There's none of these wearable devices, none of these new technologies, whatever we're talking about, are intrinsically bad or good. None of them are. It's what we do with it and how we manage it. But again, our religion here in the Valley is technology will save us.
Yeah.
It is. We believe it. Absolutely. Whether you came from Europe or you live here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe it, absolutely.
I want to know who's developing those. Google has already got the contact lenses to regulate someone's insulin levels and deliver insulin via.
no, it's not.
They just measure, they measure the
No, it's
insulin
okay, I
level.
can hear around you.
So you,
And send it back, the data back to your phone so that you know what your insulin level
You still have to
is.
use root diagnostics.
You still have
a
to
little
actually
bit,
then get
yeah.
the,
The microfluidic
Take the
pump.
so
insulin.
you have to
Yeah.
have an insulin pump or something.
or an
sterile.
inhaler or something, yeah. So,
Well, I don't think that's quite been approved yet, from what I.
So,
Yeah, but that's look, what's approved or not, or which policymakers or politicians,
Oh,
this
that's
is,
wonderful.
it's all, please. This is just who sells what and who makes the money on it.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with what we really develop.
Yes.
But I'm thinking, now we have smartphones, and they're in a pocket, and they ring if you forget to turn them off. Next thing are watches, yeah, which means it's wonderful. You no longer have to take your phone out of your pocket to see who sends you a text message. I mean, that's a major improvement, yeah, even faster, yeah. And then very soon, when I was 8 years old and I didn't know nothing about computers, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a radio? When they fill your tooth, you go to the dentist, they put a radio in and somehow connect the wires to the nerve, so you could listen to radio the whole time in school. And this will soon be possible, yes, somehow, yeah. So, and you don't even have to look at your arm anymore for the email. It just comes to your brain, you know. Is this, or in 20 years we'll see. You have no idea. You guys are too young. There were days when people looked at their email all the time. Nobody reads this stuff anymore. It's perfectly okay. I get messages once a week. It's more than enough. People were crazy. They wanted to everything know immediately. Yeah? I mean, this is a development. Yeah. I mean, apart from the fact that the majority, and I don't have numbers, of people around the world don't have the technology that we have in the Silicon Valley. I mean, here everybody has a smartphone. Yeah. Although I saw data when we did the payment stuff, and we had to analyze how many people have smartphones or mobile phones. Can you do mobile payment? Yes, I also have four mobile payment companies behind me. And we found out that there are about 2.5 or 3 billion credit cards in the world, about 5 billion phones, but only 2 billion toothbrushes.
yeah, at the end of the day, all these technologies are about connecting people, and at the end of the day, it's really about connecting brains, right? You know, if you think about it, everything we perceive happens in our neocortex, you know, about the size of a handkerchief, right? And every signal comes in there electrically, and everything we output goes out electrically. And our bodies are just devices to help us sort of turn our thoughts into action and collect input. And all we want to do is connect these brains more efficiently. We want to communicate more efficiently. We want to take more input, react faster, and have more power in our output, right? If I look at my son, he's 18 years old. when he turned 16, he was able to get a driver's license, and I told him, look, I'll give you half the money to the car I'm sure you want to buy if you earn half of it. He couldn't care less about a car. He didn't. The car was not important to him, and it wasn't important to any of his friends. When I was that age, the first thing I wanted to do was get a car because it allowed me to stay in touch with my friends. Now they're on their iPhone, they're on video games, whatever. They are so connected that the car is a relic from the past because the technology, the car was the means that gave me power to stay in touch. Now it's their devices, right? And these devices are going to move closer and closer to our brain, right? It's going to be the Google Glass is the next step. I was talking to, sorry, what was your name again? The Greek professor at Berkeley. So there's one of the guests here is a professor of neurological connectivity at currently at Berkeley, and there was a study just on TED that they did at Berkeley, which was fascinating, where they were able to read the mind for the first time using MRI technology. So what they did was they showed people videos, about 100 hours of videos, YouTube videos, while they were in the MRI. And then they showed them a completely random video, not something that was cut and paste from the existing, a completely random video. And they did an MRI of the brain while they were watching that video, and they were able to reconstruct relatively precise the images that people were seeing in that video just through the MRI by basically taking these patterns and synthesizing that back. So that is sort of essentially a sort of a thought reading device. Currently still requires a big MRI machine, but it's sort of the most direct interaction you can imagine, right? It's essentially a device that reads your brain information, right? And that's where it's going to go. At the end of the day, no matter how much we worry about privacy issues and how it's going to change our society, people want to connect with other people. And the more we tear down those barriers, the more those devices are going to get adopted.
Yeah, and after that disappear. I mean,
they will become part of us. They'll become extensions of us. So, yeah.
Well, and I think to your point in here, I mean, once you go in here and you take things and you make them low power, like we were talking about the contact lens, when whitricity becomes normal, when there is no cables and cords and things to plug in, when things just work, when power is not really an issue, literally, its power is an infinite bandwidth on it, then computer power, who cares? You can just have as much as you want or as little as you want and do whatever you want wherever you want. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
It would have been great to have an anthropologist here, because I would suspect with all the advances in technology, you might have a backlash when people are just saying this is going too fast for us, and they might want to hold on to the way things were. And I don't know if this is a generational thing or if it's something that we will see more of, that you will actually have a renaissance of old things from the past, because people are feeling it is just hurling us.
As always been. I mean, it's always a generational, and people will always hold back. They're always Luddites, and yeah. I mean, my grandfather insisted that no, music has to come out of. Now, music was on records, but everything else was from the radio, and it was very clear what he used for what. And only until he no longer could walk was he willing to let a TV into his house. And now we go to the point where we don't want TV anymore. So, but I'm really asking, it's not the people who say it's too fast, the good old days. No, but the people who go forward and say, you know what, I mean, the next generation really is getting rid of all this stuff. And it's not, as you pointed out, it's not necessarily everything like in Silicon Valley. Like when you work with Russian business people, the top executives have small, little flip phones. They don't need these smartphones. They have an assistant who has a smartphone.
That's great.
They need a phone so they can call their wife, their girlfriend, and the assistant, and the driver. It's a status symbol not to have a smartphone in Moscow.
No, that's funny. That's
I think.
There was one thing that was intriguing, I thought, and I wanted to add something that you said. We want to connect. We want to connect people, and I want to. Actually, what we're really working on is beyond that. We want to connect people with things as well. We want to connect things together. So, here's a story that illustrates that well. So mobile payments, and you said it well, and everybody sort of was involved with mobile payments one way or the other. Never really took off yet, right? Why? Why? Just ask the question, why are we not using our phones to pay? Now, one of the issues is that we're not solving a problem that we have today. Last time I checked, the process of paying in a supermarket was relatively straightforward. I walked up to the cashier. He scanned it or whatever he did. He pointed me to what I had to pay. Put out my wallet, credit card or cash, whatever, handed it to him. There was something going on there, typically an authorization of the transaction done. Now, we're not improving that process. With all the mobile payment technology that is out there, we're not improving any of that. We're not making it more convenient, really. What mobile payments companies will tell you all day long is that they make this better. They are not, because you really can't make it better. The way how we really do it, and the way this is really going, is you just walk into Safeway or Lucky's or whatever your supermarket is, grab whatever you want, and you walk out. That's it. That is the future. And the way how we do it is essentially by what you were referring to, connecting not only people, but connecting people to things and things to things. What we need to do is, while we walk in there, you need to register somehow. And here we are back at that big data discussion, right? But connecting, checking in with that supermarket without you even knowing it. Connecting yourself or your device, whatever it is, with the pieces that you're grabbing. RFID chips and all these things, they're really tiny. They're not even low energy, they're passive. They don't do anything. There is no energy there. And then you connect that, and while you exit the store exactly knows, okay, this is what you have taken with you.
And they do facial recognition and figure out who you are.
Exactly. So then you add security by facial recognition and all that stuff. You do it through proximity and all that. So that's the future where this is going. This is true mobile payments. And this is essentially not only mobile payments, mobile identity and all that stuff. But this is where wearable devices and connected devices are really going.
Oh, yeah, do you want to say something?
Do I still have to go to the store? I mean, if I look at I see that we're almost out of apples, Google's going to know that we're almost out of apples. and I'm going to pay for it through my mobile, or whatever, non-existent mobile device at that point, right? And it'll show up at the door.
Well, don't they have a really
With a
big push
drone.
right now for get it from Costco, get it from Whole Foods, get it from, they're really pressing that.
But the real issue is that, of course, the system will tell you, sorry, yeah, you had too many cupcakes this month, yeah. Or the price goes up. You say, you want more cupcakes? Well, we have to overcharge you because you're over your limit, like with water.
Log with a zero. I have a question when it comes to payment. You said earlier FDA or politically be beholden. Wouldn't Visa or American Express, who are in a very contentious relationship with most retailers, because there's this swipe fee thing, and it's an enormous amount of money to the industry. It's almost $55 billion a year. How Visa makes money off of that swipe fee. Do you fear that the incumbents can thwart this kind of future that you just sketched out?
We can spend the rest of the evening and the whole day tomorrow, the three of us, talk to you about mobile payment and why it is so great, yeah? And when we all have our marketing spiel, this is no question, yeah? Absolutely. They would be in there. They have a problem, they want to be in there, they cannot be in there. Then there are the telecom companies who also try and who also can't be in there. Swipe fee, you're right, the swipe fees are so high that at Safeway, the swipe fee are higher than the annual revenue.
Okay, so most people
And
don't know
we
that.
learned,
That's-
like one of those big chains, I can't say which one, Safeway, Kroger, whatever, they say every second they can save in the checkout process is $4 million a year.
Yeah.
So they are interested, and it's not the credit card people. It's the elderly ladies. Excuse me, could you please take the money out of my wallet? Yeah.
So those fares are going to get broken down.
Yes.
And the private initiatives like Bitcoin, for example, whether I think Bitcoin will ultimately prevail, but if it's not Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin 2 or Bitcoin 3. So sooner or later, someone's going to have a and a peer-to-peer unregulated payment scheme that nobody can control, and that'll be no payment fees. They'll be so cheap that it'll just get adopted by merchants and consumers, and then the sort of the Visa, MasterCard, American Express oligopoly will be sort of a thing of yesterday. So I think technology is going to help address that, and I also think what's happening, back to your example in the payment space, what's now happening is that the problems that used to be hard for computers to do are now becoming solvable. So there's this paradox that when computers were invented, they were good at things that were hard for people. Lots of calculations, accounting, big math problems, those things. That's what they were good at. The simple things, like walking or driving a car and talking and recognizing a person, the things that a baby or a young child can do, those were hard. So it was this paradox. Hard things for humans were easy for computers, and easy things for humans were hard for computers. Okay, so as late as 2004, there was a paper published saying, this is, computers aren't going to be able to do the really fundamental human tasks, for example, like driving a car, right? You won't be able to drive a car, or talk, or speech recognition, all these things. Those are perceived as the hard problems. Now, with continued exponential growth in computing power, we're starting to solve these problems, right? Google invested in Uber. I love Uber because it breaks the taxi monopoly and oligopoly. It's such a great company that kills the regulation of this stupid taxi business all around the world. So on a I think $7 billion valuation, they raised $300 million just a few months ago from Google. And what are they going to use that for? Those $300 million are going to buy driverless cars in San Francisco that will pick you up when you order an Uber car, right? So they have now gotten these driverless cars to the point where they can drive not only on simple sort of traffic conditions on a highway, they can navigate complex conditions in the city. And so in 2 years' time, you order an Uber cab and you have a driverless car pick you up. So it's these hard problems for computers that are now become tractable. You start applying that. That's what is happening with wearable technology or with your automated checkout process. All of a sudden, typical human skills start getting added to these computer tasks, and it's going to completely change what we can do with these technologies.
But specifically, when you think about yourself driving a car, I mean, you think, oh, come on, a computer can never do that, yeah? Most of the stuff we do, humans are not even very good at. Meaning controlling everything that's around, controlling the machine, the reaction time. But we found a lot of data that people are really scared, that they don't have control of the car. Yeah? That's why people like to drive stick shifts, because then they have control. We all can drive stick shifts in Europe, but
I just want to take a comment on what you're saying. A few months ago, GABA held a seminar about the future of the technology in the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gentleman from Direct West who came in he was a founder, he developed a new technology. 10 slides, 25 minutes, not a single thing was addressed to safety of the people. What are you driving? You're driving a weapon, essentially. And you don't pay attention to your foot, don't pay attention to your steering, your hands. You can kill somebody, you can get yourself killed. There was no attention to that. So I asked the gentleman, I said, you're talking about all these, what you can do, texting and all of that. This is bullshit. You are driving a weapon here. So this should be your number one priority, to make sure it's safe. It's safe for yourself, it's safe for the people around you. And there was not a single out of that. I said, technology exists today that you can put all these, where you want to go on the GPS on the computer. Add each state's laws of what you will be violating, and somehow stop you for driving it. Now, today I drive every day and I feel very disgusted. People have forgot to, even they don't have the broken hands or whatever, they never give a turn signal. For anything, they never give a turn signal. And it's a law. So we are sort of gone to the stage new technology, but not the reality of the thing.
Well, the Google car will give a turn.
I would rather say that these people, their cars jam up, they cannot turn. No, and they get a ticket for that. Everything is there.
Oh, you can have a ticket printed in the car. It's so cheap, you can have a ticket printed.
Well, I think you mentioned it before about the S-Class Mercedes.
Yeah?
What is a luxury item today will be standard in a short period of time. Anti-lock brakes 30 years ago when Saab first put them in commercial vehicles, that was unheard of. Now everybody has an
But the
anti-lock
point
brake.
is, I mean, now,
Collision avoidance software, which is on the Mercedes right now, that will be, every car will have that. Even if it's not truly automated, it will be semi-automated. So all of these things will come in, automatic braking systems, all these things will come, even if you still drive the car, it's gonna be assisted driving.
or maybe you're gonna drive the car the same way your 4-year-old drives the car when he sits in his car seat, you know, they have that's
Well, no, what's gonna happen is the insurance company's gonna say, if you don't use this technology, your insurance goes out the roof. So you have to use the
self-driving
technology.
car will be more expensive than computer-driven cars.
That's right.
Well, you know, the thing to remember is also, God has given you the mind, the brain. Nothing else can be duplicated. A software engineer can do whatever the event can be duplicated for, but it does not do a good job.
Look, brain is not very good for car driving.
Exactly. Right, if you look at the statisticians will show you why traffic jams occur, and it's not because of an accident, it's because of reaction times. This Google car would, in fact, would make it so more efficient with regard to traffic velocity, as well as us actually being engaged in constructive matters, rather than looking at some taillight in front of us.
Road rage will be an extra feature you have to pay extra for.
Yeah. Exactly, Florian.
Well, can we talk
Also,
about
by the way,
form
I wanna
factor?
mention-
Form factor, sorry.
So I was wondering if we can talk about form factor
Sure.
a while. So there's no doubt that wearable technology has huge potential, but with so much backlashes against Google Glass, I wonder if it's an indication that wearable ideas are more likely to succeed if it's embedded in existing devices, okay, such as car and contact lenses, like you're saying. Because even watches that seem like an easy idea to adopt, I don't know how much market penetration will eventually get. Because look at all the smartphones; they're getting bigger, not smaller. So anyway, just want to
But
get your
look, when
thoughts
you look
on that.
around, some people, I have glasses here, yeah? We're just talking about, yeah? And I mean, just because we know what Google Glass looks like, and we know relatively what technology can do, we know that none of the people who have sunglasses, eyeglasses, glasses, that there is a lot of technology built in. In 3 years, you will not be able to see it.
I think you have a good point. It's the form factor that matters. Microsoft came out with a little device that you can clip to your shirt, and there's a couple of other companies, and it's essentially a camera that takes constant video, and if you press a button, it will upload the last 3 minutes of video through your Bluetooth to your phone and then up into your Skype account. They're basically launching this, I don't know if they've already launched it or they're launching it shortly. And I've seen a few people wear them, and there's other devices like that. So you've got people at events that have these little clips on, and they're constantly recording stuff. And if you want to basically now record something, what you're really doing is you're recording the last 3 minutes, right? Not saying record forward, but you press the button and say, now go back 3 minutes. So let's say somebody told a joke or there was a funny scene at the dinner table. You say, this is something I want to save, so you get the last 3 minutes of that, right? That device is so unintrusive that people accept it, right? Even though they know that it's recording or could record or upload, they accept it, right? The moment you put that on the glasses, it becomes an intrusive thing in your face, right? So it's not the fact that it's recording, and I don't think it's the privacy of Google Glasses that's really sort of hurting it, right? Because people are, if it's on your shirt, they're much more tolerant. If it's on your glasses, they're not. I think it's subtle things like the aggressiveness of having something on your glass, and I now have Google Glass, and I have all this information that my counterpart doesn't have. I think there's a psychology going on that's hurting the adoption there.
I mean, now we're talking about adoption, which is, and I'm not saying I disagree with you. I just want to add if there's one thing from the mobile payments discussion that we can all learn, is that unless you provide real value to consumers, they're not going to adopt. It sounds incredibly trivial, but it isn't. So Google Glass today, why we are not wearing Google Glass tonight, everybody here, is because there's no true value for us there in doing it. Now, if there was some true value in it, we would probably all just wear it. And that's back to the wearable devices and payments question here. Because mobile payments companies today don't make it easier to pay and actually make a transaction at the point of sale, nobody is really using it except from a Starbucks application. So I think next to the form factor, there's also what is that device actually doing? How is it helping you to make your life convenient? And I'm saying convenient. I'm not using the word better. I would never do that. I don't think we're making this world better with wearable devices. Not necessarily. We're making it convenient.
Now, it's interesting. We talk about Google Glass. We talk about one feature, that's the camera. But the real thing is, I look at you, and rather than say what you said, the gentleman who is a professor in Berkeley, you can actually just look, and the system recognizes the face and shows you on Google Glass all the 27 books that you've written the last year. So that is much more interesting to your point about connectivity. You can see, you say, oh my God, when did we last meet? 96, you said? Well, Google Glass would show me everything. Then we ran into each other. You walk in, so who was that person? You can see everything. That is the way more conceptually more interesting part. Now. I'm not sure, imagine a situation where you have to wear Google Glass, I mean, they could also change the law that everybody has to wear Google Glass, I mean, it sounds kind of absurd, but we've seen wilder things, I believe that the form factor that you mentioned about the size, once the thing gets so small that it's implanted and you don't see it at all anymore, do a quick time lapse, 2,000 years back. 2,200 years back, where it was necessary training that you could memorize complete talks, which was no problem for the average educated person to remember everybody in the room. There's a very famous story about somebody who wanted to give a talk and he walked out because they didn't like him and the roof collapsed. He remembered, although he was in the room only for 5 minutes, every single person. They were all dead. He was outside. And he remembered could give the name of every single person. Mnemotechnic was more important than rhetoric in the old days. And today nobody can remember anything anymore. They didn't need any devices. And then when there's this famous dialogue with Phaedros about the dangers of writing down stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So lots of the issues we're talking about here, like privacy, a lot of that's going to get addressed by, I think, changing cultural norms, right? So when Facebook came out, there was this big thing. Kids were posting on their Facebook pictures of parties where they got drunk, and then the worry was, well, employers aren't going to hire them because they see drunk pictures. The reality is everybody gets drunk.
Yeah.
And if you stop hiring someone just because they have a drunk picture on their Facebook site, you might as well get rid of 95% of your applicants, right? So all that's really happened is that the world's got used to the fact that people are who they are, right? So, they do what they do, and you have a more realistic view of what people do, and they're not so uptight about it anymore. So in a way, the norm has changed, right?
I actually disagree with you. I think that think about statute of limitations on law. If you got convicted as a juvenile, it went away when you're 18. It doesn't go away anymore now. Somewhere there's a computer system that never goes away. And so people want to find it, it never goes away.
Yeah, but everybody does it. We hired a guy who got fired at Stanford because he was driving under the influence. Smoked marijuana, right? Got fired at Stanford, so all that allowed us to do was hire him more cheaply, right? Because but the reality is, people don't change their behavior, and all the social networks do is make it more clear what people actually do, right? And so people grow more tolerant. I don't actually think that's a bad thing.
But that's not true,
It makes it
actually,
more
about the value of what you do and where it is. If you don't pay your income tax and somehow that's on the web, and you're not going to be hired in a position where you have a fiduciary responsibility, and that's the same if you're investing in a company and making any kind of financial decision. If a company were to hire you, the fiduciary responsibility and the liability would shift to the company. The company will eliminate you. They don't want that liability. And that's the value to the company. You can put all this stuff out there, and smart companies are going to use it. Maybe you didn't use it in that instance because it was not important to what you were doing. But the data is there, and smart people do use the data to advance the mission of their institution.
I agree, but that's also how a lot of, for example, contracts were enforced. In the old days, where you didn't have sort of extradition treaties and governments that can enforce laws, people would not do business with people who didn't keep their word, right? So the reputation was important, right? And if it got out there that you were a diamond merchant in Antwerpen and you didn't, you agreed to a bargain and you didn't follow through on it, then you were out of the community. That's how they enforced it. They didn't go to the courts and say, arrest this person. They just said, nobody's going to do business with you anymore. So for the stuff that matters, if you do something bad, you don't play by the rules, you get basically kicked out of the community, and effectively all the social networks do is make that more transparent, right? So it's actually, in my view, it's a good thing. The stuff that doesn't matter, everybody does, so you start to ignore it, and the stuff that does matter becomes part of the record, and people should know about it.
You're next. When you think about it, in the community of Diamond Antwerp, they knew each other. They didn't need Facebook. Everybody lived in the same three streets, and they were all together, so they didn't need it. Today, we had a time when nobody knew anything. So we somehow getting back to the old days, where all the butchers live in one corner of the village, and all the plumbers live in the other area, and they know each other. And if you don't deliver, then But what you said about tax evasion, if you know what you're doing, you get a great job. Maybe not in the US, but in Italy for sure. You know what you're doing. Don't steal from your boss, please, sir.
Interesting things have come up around the concept of the erasable internet. As we're saying, the problem is you post something on Facebook and it's there forever. The people have said the concern is, well, it's all out there forever, but it's also the principle of it was, well, you post up your photos and you go back and find them again. Is that people in the Generation Z or Z that we're getting into? It's like, we don't care. It's like, I'm going to take a picture and I can post it on Facebook, but I'm never going to go back and look at it again. I'm never going to draw back because I have so much new information coming in. So that is becoming a reason why it's the raison d'etre for Snapchat, and it's why Instagram is doing so well, because I capture memory is constantly circulating rather than being stored. So there's that ethos of it is changing. That issue of it being stuck out there forever has an additional element to it.
Please.
I want to say that these problems are not problems of the future. Now we're talking about privacy, about ownership of personal data, but this is for today, because today we communicate. We have more or less conscious communication, transmitting data, receiving data. In 10 years or 20 years, we will not be communicating, we will be integrated. We will transmit and receive information without conscious control of what we are doing between humans and devices. So the ownership of the data and the privacy will disappear. So if we will talk about the business for the next 10 or 20 years, okay, but after that it will be totally different. We will be integrated one to the other.
So
Florian, I was going to say, if we're going to talk about privacy issues, probably we want these two guys to say something behind me.
Okay.
They're the future, not us.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. No,
20 years.
sorry, no.
No, in 20 years you're going to run a company.
Yeah, I mean, he is the future. Look at us. Stand up, buddy. I mean, you're the guy that's going to...
No,
where does he go?
my opinion about privacy concerning data, it's really personal, like my personal view, but I see, there's, as you said, there's a lot of positive effects I see as well, because things that people do and that really do matter in society or in the community you're living in, that they will more or less force you or educate you from the beginning to behave in in a way that doesn't I don't know, negatively affect other people around you, and things that don't matter, as for example pictures of you being drunk or something, something that everyone does and that's normal as a human. I don't think they will affect, I don't know, your future, for example, in a job or whatever. What would you say, Daniel?
So for me, it's just I think it's a new way to pay. So for example, we get Facebook, we pay with our data. So it's always if something is free. I think that's a quite famous sentence. If something is free, you are the product. So today, instead of paying with money, we often pay with our data. And as long as we get value for it, I think that's okay.
Well said.
I think you touched on something, and there's what we in the Silicon Valley are often hoping for is the self-regulation of the market. Unfortunately, I'm a big fan of that. I've started to be a very, very big fan of that even. The reason is, if you're in the payments world, that is an industry that is heavily regulated. And then you have the mobile world. And few people know it, the mobile world is also very heavily regulated. And from literally top down regulated. And what I've learned over the past 14 years is, in most cases, regulation is not about the consumer. It's not about what's good for the consumer. It's really just what's good for the regulatory body.
Absolutely.
And that is true for everywhere in the world. So even though I do believe that in the payments world specifically, we need regulation, we need laws, we need everything that we talked about, we need to solve the privacy issues and all that stuff, it would really, how to say that? It would lead to a lot of innovation if we would more go the way that you were really saying here, is like, let the market regulate itself. Let's forget it for a minute. Let's forget about privacy. Let's forget about swipe fees. Let's forget about the taxi commissioner of the city of San Francisco, how he makes his money. And let's just go ahead and do something and see if it actually makes our life more convenient.
But Claire, may I ask, so you were talking about, completely disrupting and creating something else. But if you look at, for me, adoption by consumers would be what you're striving for. You look at the new device called Square Up, it's still built on existing frameworks.
Yes.
They're still collecting the 2.5%.
Oh, that's not mobile
So
payment.
it's basically just layered, so there
No,
is no
no,
real disruption.
Yeah, but Bitcoin is an example of real disruption in the payment space.
Yes.
And yeah, it's got its birthing pains, but it's essentially a true P2P network where you transfer money more or less anonymously around the world instantaneously without fees. And the issues it's having are partially to do with some of the early adoption issues, and partially with the regulators being scared of it, right? For example, China was a huge adopter of Bitcoin because they have their two currencies. They have their renminbi and then their external currency, the yuan. And what it really does is it's a political instrument that essentially keeps wages low in China, right? So even though China has gone through this huge economic boom, if you're a worker in mainland China, you can't get your money out. You can't get access to international products. So it keeps wages artificially low and subsidizes entrepreneurs and politicians on the coast, right? But the worker wants to get their money out, so now they have Bitcoin, right? Now they can move it out. That's why they were adopting it, and that's why China's cracking down. So if you look at what's really been impeding the adoption of this payment technology, it's, as you said, it's the regulator, right? The regulator does not want to give up the power. They want to know who's making a payment to whom. That's how they enforce their laws, right? If they say gambling is illegal, drug use is illegal, you can't buy this or that, they basically crack down on the credit card companies, right? That's how they enforce gambling. And if you now have a payment instrument that bypasses the credit card companies, then all these laws become unenforceable, right? You know, now all of a sudden you can go to any website in the world and pay with Bitcoin, right? Or you know, use a genetic analysis service that's illegal in the U.S. So they're scared shitless, excuse my language, of a payment instrument that they can't control.
I mean, ultimately, it's the general misconception that all these rules and regulations and laws are made so that we can be safer and happier. That's not the point. If you go back to travel community, where, as was pointed out before, if you don't play along, you get excluded. They don't worry where you get your dinner. They just throw you out of the circle and that's it. And of course, Facebook on a much larger scale works the same way. And I mean, you are way more expert in hiring, but what we do is we say, come on, I mean, if this guy didn't get drunk when he was a student, he must have had a very boring life. Maybe he's a nerd who didn't have any girlfriends until he was 35, But otherwise, I'm sure he got drunk, but we didn't know it, Today, you find the pictures, and if you move forward in life, you say, if there are 300 pictures of a guy being drunk, you may have reconsidered, But you assume that the guy...
In terms of drunkenness in our society, you look at the leniency of our DWI laws, you look at the carnage that occurs in our highways. Who gives a goddamn about a picture on Facebook when in fact we give someone 6 months in jail because they killed someone on the highway? Being drunk in our society, driving in our society is in fact condoned. So who cares about a picture on Facebook?
Well, I want to get back to what you said, because I think what you said was really fascinating about what the future will look like. But I wonder, because a few years ago, social media was all the rage, right? But then you start to have sharing economy, because it helps bring people to connect in the physical space. So I feel like part of us will always remain human. And so if what you're saying, which is very thought-provoking, and fascinating, but I think it will be equally fascinating to think about what the other counter-mainstream will look like in the future. There might be a way for people to disconnect just because they want to get away from it. Look at how yoga and all this meditation are taking off. So it would be really interesting to kind of think about that as well.
Looks like some we have a topic for another. Very, very interesting. Please, sir.
But I think to that point, I think it's the rise of the Snapchat and WhatsApp, particularly, was for a long time with smartphones. It's all been about a richer experience. It's more data, more experience, more ways of interacting. What's already there's being a certain amount of a pullback is people going, actually, I don't need all of that. I don't. It's a complex thing to process. I'm happy to pull back into a simpler way of doing it. I'm going to use this as a tool, but I don't want I don't find this an all-consuming singular online presence and ability to access everything all the time to actually be that convenient or helpful to me. We're effectively, in some ways, we're going back to SMS rather than going forward into a fully integrated communications platform the whole time. And so, are we? To that point, is we're still remaining quite human in that regard. We're not being completely subsumed into our devices.
So I think we slowly have to wrap up. Do you want to give Paul Stephen? I know, when we had a call, and I said, well, usually around 8 p.m. people start to disappear. I went to a different problem. We could probably be here until midnight. I'm excited that everybody stays. You want to say something before you?
Well, no, I just have a question back to with the wearable devices, because I've read a lot, of data for, of course, the the emission of radiation from cell phones, and I just was wondering, did they test that for the Google glasses or for any other devices on the body for the radiation damages?
Sure, like everything in life is dangerous, you know. That's why they had somebody with a red flag in front of the train, because they were sure anybody would drive faster than 30 miles and would suck the air out and people would die. It has some impact, but I mean the radiation out of the ground and these light bulbs and yeah.
For the amounts, I mean, I don't know why, you know, about the Google glasses.
When I grew up, asbestos was something nice. Nice to have, yeah. I played with a asbestos thing and it was there for the island.
I'm sure they tested. I don't know.
I mean, regarding communication, they don't use new technology. All these devices use Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. That's nothing new. So it's basically the same issues like with devices that have been around for a while.
And to be honest, if you're afraid of radiation, you shouldn't use airplanes, for example.
Well, no, I just close to your head. I mean, if you're using something that's right on your eyes or your brain all the time, that's something I just was questioning.
We have one more statement back there, and then let's have the two.
This is very common, like it's a counter reaction right now. And in Norway, where I'm from, there was a lot of people saying that they are scared of the antennas, they are scared of the phones. Didn't help that the earlier WHO leader Gro Harlem Brundtland said that she couldn't stand being close to a person speaking in the phone. And then they did a lot of research on it, even governmental, and they found out that it's more or less like you see an antenna and you think you're sick. You see a cell phone, you think you're sick. It has no real reaction on you. They couldn't scientifically prove it. And if you have a phone next to you or a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi antenna 10 meters away from you, you get the same kind of radiation. And you get more radiation, the same wavelengths from the sun. That would actually mean that all these people that think they are sick would not be able to be outside in the sun. But it's still something that we as people would think of alien to us because it's a new thing. It's a new kind of development that you're having a phone in your hand the whole time, that you're having no Google glasses on. It's something that is still not settled down. We will have a counter reaction. I think that will grow a lot more, and you will see a lot of bogus articles on the net and new stuff that will flourish, and people will benefit and make money out of this, and then it will go back to normal again because they will see that there's no value added.
It's the ultimate evil eye, the new one. You want to give the first one?
Yeah, I think I want to comment on that before I give my final statement here. I think that is an interesting question, even though I'm personally not so much concerned about the health issue. I have a different concern with new technology like that, is circling back to that thing, we're making the world better. Which means we're making my life better, not more convenient, but better. And I'm not so sure about that, if we're really doing that. If we're really making my life that much better with smartphones and wearable devices. I just know that I'm sometimes so distracted that my wife asks me, have you been listening to what I was saying for the last 3 hours? Because I was constantly checking my phone. But that's a whole new discussion, but that relates to you. It's like this. It's like, are we really doing the right thing here? What we're doing with wearable devices today, I think, it's the encouraging thing about this is, or the encouraging outlook is that we're able to do something that makes something that we don't like to do, stuff that is burdensome, stuff that we have to do, but there's no joy in it, such as going shopping for groceries and paying at the end. We're trying to make that a more convenient process by really solving some of the problems that we haven't been able to solve in the last 10 years. And we're using wearable devices, we're using new types of devices that are only on the market for the last years or so, in order to make that happen. And that's what I'm really excited about. Is that going to fly? Is that going to be the next big thing? Is this going to last us for the next 1,000 years? I don't know, and I don't think so. But at least we're now able to solve the real problem behind mobile payments and some of the other stuff with wearable devices, and that's why I'm so excited about it.
I think technology makes our lives better. That's why we live longer, that's why there's less people in poverty, and if it weren't good for us, we wouldn't be doing it in the long run. Every now and then we do something stupid, but we realize that, and then we change our behavior. So if it makes profit, and if people adopt it, it's ultimately most likely going to be a good thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. The story I wanted to end with is one of our advisory board members is a guy called George Church. He's a professor at Harvard for biochemistry. Fascinating guy, and I completely randomly got into this whole biochemistry thing, so I had no clue about the whole space. But I've learned a huge amount from him, and he's doing this absolutely fascinating research. One of the things he did was he is using DNA as a storage medium, and I'm telling this story because I think that it's sort of a perspective of where this whole wearable devices thing could go. It's going to go beyond semiconductor technology. It's going to go into biochemistry and nanotechnology. And what he did was he published a book. The book is Regenesis. It's called Regenesis. And it's about how synthetic biology is going to change our lives. And then he encoded that book in DNA. So he basically synthetically took every word in the book and every picture and every piece of code, and he encoded it in DNA. And then he used an enzyme, polymerase, and ran what's called a polymerase chain reaction. And he made hundreds of billions of copies of it, which basically happens in minutes. So he calls it the most published book in history. You can then take a piece of paper and put that in that little solution. So after 30 minutes, this little enzyme basically makes 100 billion copies of the book. You put a piece of paper in it, you dry it up, and then you can store it. And then if you put it in a sequencer, you can sequence. And he showed that he took the information back, and every picture in the book and every piece of code was all there. The software assembles it, and it's stored in DNA. In fact, DNA is the most dense storage medium on the planet. The entire information content of the internet, every YouTube video, everything can be stored in 1 gram of DNA. If you took everything on the internet today and stored it, you need 1 gram of DNA. You can store all the information there is. The DNA in your body alone, if you unraveled it, would go from here to the sun and back about 100 times. That's how much DNA is in your body. So one of the applications he mentioned, this is probably science fiction, but he said, you could imagine paint. You could imagine paint that has a little camera in it. Effectively, a lens could be like a glucose, some little glucose lens, and then the paint is effectively, a cell that records everything it sees indefinitely. You can just keep recording and recording and recording, and it stores that information in DNA using a nanotechnology enzyme. So the paint's recording, and then 20 years from now, there's a murder in this room. You scrape off the paint, and you sequence everything, and then you have a complete recording of everything that ever happened in this room, right? 20 years back, right? Whether or not that's going to happen or not is a different story. But I think I'm mentioning this because it's going to change the way we think about technology. It's not just semiconductors and little machines. It's going to be in our cells are information processing machines, and we're going to be able to design these, and that's going to be sort of the true wearable devices of the future.
Yeah. There was a German monk, Jesuit, who did all sorts of experiments in the 16th, 17th century, especially project images on the wall in the church, a candle and all that. And everybody was sure, they move, must be the devil. He was a very early cinematography guy, Athanasius Kircher. Yeah? Lots of research in that area. Absolutely. I mean, the eyes will have walls. They will have walls. We can do many, many things that do information communication, as you say, integration, and it will not be a computer as we know it today. Thank you.
I would ask the three of you, name 3 most important things you could name we should pay our attention to from this technology.
Before we do that, I would like to thank the panelists for coming. I would like to thank you for coming and for participating, and I would like to thank GABA to support me in organizing this. It was a great event. I'm very excited. Thank you so much. drive home safely in your self-driven car or in the automatic controlled bar.
Thank you. Stimulating.